Hey guys, I'm Aaron with PhoneDog.com. You know, if you read my first impressions of the Dell Aero smartphone with AT&T, you know I didn't care for it too much. I think the build quality is a little bit lacking on the Dell side, and then on the software side, both being Android 1.5 and the fact that Dell chose to install a custom user skin, I think it's a little bit lacking there as well. So, you know, you look at it, you say it's a mid-range device. For $299, I can get the Palm Pre Plus for the same retail price, and it puts me right in that range in terms of full retail, near the Aria, a couple of other AT&T, the Backflip, a couple of other AT&T mid-range devices. So the question becomes, just because it's a mid-range Android smartphone, does it have to be cheap? Does it have to be running the oldest version of Android? Does it have to have, you know, some sort of custom skin? The answer is no. So, you know, from that perspective, I didn't care for the Dell Aero, but we're going to delve into it in typical Phone Dog style with a full video review, get some ins and outs of the hardware, ins and outs of the software, you know, and let you make your own opinion, or your own decision rather. What do you think of it? We're going to do that right now. So the Dell Aero Android smartphone, AT&T, full review starts right now. Okay, so here's the Dell Aero Android smartphone, and to give you a recap in case you didn't see the unboxing, it has a 5-megapixel camera on the back. It does not, interestingly enough, have a 3.5mm headphone jack. Instead, it has a mini USB charging port which doubles up as the headphone jack. Dell includes an adapter in the box. So I remember when I was unboxing this on video, my first thought was, one, this is 2010 and we're still using mini USB charging ports on mid-range smartphones. And two, again, this is a mid-range smartphone, you know, something that costs $300 out of the box, and it doesn't have a dedicated 3.5mm headphone jack. That's a little unacceptable, you know, in today's world where you can get an HTC Legend or an Aria or, you know, an LG Ally, all of which have 3.5mm headphone jacks, you know, for right around the same price. That was, you know, a little bit frustrating and, you know, kind of interesting. But the build quality, you know, it's all plastic, and it feels, you know, honestly to me, it feels kind of cheap in the hand. I don't know, maybe I'm spoiled by other mid-range devices like the HTC Legend, you know, but still, I mean, you look, both of these are mid-range devices, and look at the build quality difference. So, kind of frustrating there, you know, it's made of plastic, and you notice it as soon as you pull it out. I mean, it's all plastic, it's lightweight, so if you're in the market for a lightweight smartphone, you know, it might be something that interests you, but it's catch-22 because it's made entirely of plastic, and, you know, it feels kind of cheap in the hand. And also you can feel, you know, it has the buttons on the side, power on the left, back button on the left side as well. Interestingly enough, there are no capacitive buttons, or physical for that matter, on the bottom. So anytime you have to go back in a menu, if it doesn't have an option to go back, like up here, see how it says slide to home. If it doesn't have that, you have to press the button on the left side. On the right side, the volume rocker, and then a shortcut button for, and I can't remember honestly, so I'm going to press it until we find out. It's not doing anything. We'll come back to that. Camera shortcut button on the right, and then when you shake it, you know, you can feel the buttons wobbling a little bit. So again, back to the build quality. I don't mean to harp on it too much, but it is a little cheap in that department as well. Chrome on the sides, 5-megapixel camera on the back, prone to fingerprints, and then when I remove the back cover, you'll see the 1000 milliamp battery and a micro SD card installed, 2GB micro SD card. So let's quick run through the body. Let's get into the software. It's running Android 1.5, and it's a custom Dell user interface. You know, and Dell claims that this interface is so custom that you won't, you know, people that are used to Android 1.5 and wanted something, you know, a little bit higher, like Android 2.1 or 2.2, they won't notice the difference. So, you know, I beg to differ. I don't know if that may be me being, you know, a little bit biased because I work with smartphones on a daily basis. But for people that have used Android 2.1 and 2.2 and are going back, they're going to notice an immediate difference. People that are, you know, first-time smartphone buyers won't. But still, very customized. You know, and that is a kind of a catch-22 because, you know, customization is great in some cases. You look at Moto Blur and HTC Sense, but you look at something like this, and Dell has actually said, you know, this device is so customized that they don't know if it's going to support any future software updates to 2.1 or 2.2 or you know, whatever Android build they decide to go to. So it's possible it may be like the Behold 2 and it may stick at a certain, you know, older Android operating system and be stuck there. So you can see I've already installed a couple of different apps like Speed Test and Extreme, or another version of Speed Test. But it's shaped very much like the iPhone. 4 shortcut buttons on top instead of the bottom, but on top, which can be moved and changed to your, you know, as you would like. And then apps on the bottom here, and they scroll, you know, from left to right, very similar to TouchWiz UI. But you can see, I mean, even just there's a little bit of a lag sliding from left to right. And I installed a widget from the market earlier, Curvefish's battery life widget, and it's not loading it properly. So a little bit of frustration there. Take that over, you know, and you can see just in day-to-day stuff, it's a little bit laggy on that front. No word on what exactly the processor is that's inside of this, but definitely laggy. 3.5-inch touchscreen, 262,000 colors. So, in terms of the display, it's a pretty decent display. Colors look good, crisp and clear. And then here's the notification bar, which you can see is also customized. You can access, you can access sounds and ringtones, communication. You can do some changes directly from the status bar versus going into the settings there. So, but when you turn it on, the first screen you see is the weather where you're at. It's 88 degrees here. It is pretty freaking hot here. So it's pretty warm and no end in sight for that. But anyway, you see that on the front. Then you scroll over, search, your widgets. So customized on that front. I'm going to jump around a little bit here, but the first thing I noticed, and maybe one of the first things you notice as well if you pick up the Aero, in addition to AT&T Video, AT&T Music, etc., there's no default or native rather Gmail application. It actually routes through Dell's email app, which is a huge frustration for Gmail users. No easy Gmail setup. It routes through like a typical POP or IMAP email account. And while we're in here, we'll have a look at the Dell keyboard as well. No Android option. It's it's a Dell customized keyboard, and within a couple of minutes, I found myself typing pretty quickly. Like hello, we'll type hello there, for example. You see, I made the mistake. But relatively quickly. Still, the keys are pretty small. There's a little bit of space in between, but they're tiny. So maybe a point of frustration for people that type on a regular basis or have big hands in that regard. So there's the landscape. You can see it's pretty laggy on that front. There's the landscape, slightly bigger keys, but still a little bit different than the Android keyboard. A little bit of lag on the keyboard, not that much, but you really see the lag when you're going through menus, when you're going back, when you're switching around pretty quickly. That's where you notice it. Now, it has this pretty unintuitive, in my opinion, way to get back. So you're in this, you think, okay, I want to go back to the home screen. As I said before, there's no capacitive back button on the bottom of the display. So, people that pull this out of the box are going to think, how in the world do I get back? And it actually took me a couple of minutes of using it before I realized there are two options on how to get back. Using this app, for example, you can either press and hold the back arrow and it says slide to home. You can do it that way, or you can press the dedicated back button on the side. So, the buttons are there. It's just an unintuitive design, in my opinion, especially for people, first-time smartphone buyers that are used to, or anybody for that matter, that are used to seeing capacitive buttons on the bottom. Simple back button does the trick, or simple return to home does the trick. Instead, it's on the side and a little bit confusing. Now, you can go through here and see, similar to a right-click or similar to pressing menu on a typical Android device, it'll give you the additional options. Manual setup's the only one in this case. But when we go into something like messaging, for example, compose a new message, you can see the options are a little bit wider ranging there. So, kind of like the right-click or a menu button there, but just generally unintuitive in my opinion, especially for a device that's solidly in the mid-range territory and is appealing to first-time Android users or first-time smartphone buyers. Not the best way to go about it, in my opinion. Let's take a look at some of the social networking options that come pre-installed. Facebook and Twitter are there out of the box, as well as Google Talk. And while I scroll through looking myself, YouTube, if you consider that a social networking option, are all there out of the box. But let's have a look at the Twitter app. It's actually a custom app put on the Dell Aero, and you can see it there. So we'll type, let's say, what's happening, get another look at the keyboard, on the Dell, on the Fel, not on the Fel, on the Dell Aero. So reasonably fast, again, you can turn it to the side. You see that lag. And then we hit update and watch it update the status. Now again, you can look at the menu here and see refresh, logout, trends, all of the different Twitter options as well. So that's there, slide to home. I haven't had a chance to play with the Facebook app, but YouTube's there, Google Talk as well. A couple of typical productivity apps, alarm clock, world clock, file manager, which is nice that that's pre-installed out of the box, backup, mobile banking, and AT&T's standard YP mobile hotspots. And as I said before, music, video, navigator, maps, etc., etc.